So now the Emory Global China Summit has ended. Before then, we will have invite Dr. Liu Yawei to give the closing remark, and later on, William Ding, the founder of Emory Global China Summit, for the closing remark as well.
So I'm the last and also the least speaker. I counted how many things I'm going to say. There are a total of 8 things I want to say, but I'll try to accomplish that within 15 minutes. So these are the 8 things. Introducing a speaker, looking at a picture, telling a story, debunking a myth, sharing a nightmare, seeking a way, thanking Sir Mao again for, and finally making an announcement. So the first is introducing a speaker. I worked for a president, that's President Jimmy Carter. I taught a president, that's President Dwight Ma. I worked with a president, that's President William Ding of the Emory Chinese Student Association. So William, you want to come over and say a few things in less than 2 minutes?
Thanks, Dr. Liu, for introducing me, and hope everyone is enjoying our summit so far. And sitting right next to me, not next to me, is Sky Tao. She is the president of ECSA, and she has given a lot of support as well. So let's give a round of applause to Sky. So my name is William Ding. I'm the founder of the Emory Global China Summit.
My name is Sky Tao, and I'm the co-founder of Emory Global China Summit and also the president of Emory Chinese Student Association.
It is a huge honor for me to collaborate with so many fascinating and fantastic organizations and institutions on this symposium. And it's also our privilege as Emory Global China Summit to be the last day's event of the 3 days symposium, U.S China at 40. I feel truly blessed. And at this crucial stage of Sino-China relations, it is our obligation as students to promote cultural exchange and mutual understanding. And we should acknowledge the fact that the trade war between U.S. and China right now not only affects the 2 countries, but also the whole world as well. That's why we named our summit Emory Global China Summit. Because as discussed by Ambassador Cui Tiankai, the relationship between U.S. and China is too important and influential to be damaged by mistrust and misunderstanding.
So we deeply understand that the future of U.S. and China relationship actually lays on the shoulder of us. Throughout this summit, it wasn't just the work of us Chinese students. There are countless Emory students like Rachel, like who offered us so much help, and it was just a collaboration work of both the U.S. student and also the Chinese student. And therefore, we wish to speak of the aim of our summit is to really deepen the understanding of the U.S. and China relationship and to connect between culture. And this is the summit that is a perfect example of that.
And we are very proud as Emory students to promote and fight for this goal of deepening the understanding between U.S. and Chinese students. And I'm blessed to have the support from Emory University, the Carter Center, the Institute for Sino-American Studies, and all the other sponsors and collaborators on this event. And this is our first year to hold the summit, and through strategic partnerships and meaningful alliances with different organizations and clubs in the future, we wish and we aimed to be the truly global China summit and truly diverse summit for everyone, for not only Chinese students, but also US students and every other student from every other background, nationality, and ethnicity. And lastly, we want to shout out to our team for their consistent efforts. This team has been working with me on the summit since last year, and please stand up, and every volunteer and every team member of the programming committee, and everyone, please give them a round of applause. They really deserve this. I feel truly blessed to have them as my teammates. I feel truly blessed to be their leader. And let's continue to fight for the goal we've made for ourselves. The summit doesn't stop here. We have more to accomplish, and there is always more for us to pursue. And we're always open to new opportunities to make this summit better. So that's our speech. Thank you so much. And we'll hand it over to
All right, so the second item on the agenda, looking at the picture. So please look at this picture. This was taken yesterday by Yu Yawei. I don't know if Yu Yawei is here. When President Carter made his very moving speech, and then he was going off the stage, and then he suddenly saw this painting there, and he paused, and then I think he commented, "Gosh, I looked a lot younger." And I think this is also a reflection of the current U.S. China relationship. I think about 10 years ago, when U.S. started looking at China, they want China to be a beautiful, handsome baby. But in the last 10 years, since 2008, the more they look at China, I think the perception is the uglier China is. And that caused a lot of concern, and that leads to the charges that China, instead of being a beautiful baby, China is a revisionist, very ugly baby that wants to overthrow the global order and want to squeeze U.S. out of at least Asia. And that's the problem. That's why we're here, to try to change that. So the third is telling a story. The story is that I was a freshman in college when President Carter and Vice President Deng Xiaoping announced the normalization. 10 years later, I came here. I was a student at the history department. I think in 1992, Emory students had a sit-in, so they surrounded the building outside saying, "We want Chinese to be taught." I think one administrator walked out and said, "We already taught Japanese. Why are you still demanding Chinese?" And now today we have so many Chinese students here. So that's the Emory transition from we already taught Japanese, and why you are worried about Chinese, and to today that I think last night Emory Vice President said China is central to Emory University. It is central to Emory University, but there's no one at Emory teaching China. So I'm a cheap adjunct professor that is actually teaching. I'm the only one that is teaching Chinese politics and Chinese foreign policy. I'm teaching that class. If you haven't signed up, then you can sign up. All right, debunking a myth. I think Dwight Ma today said, U.S. wanted to democratize China. I think on the changing thing, if you have to look at cyclically, in the first 30 years, China actually wanted, I think someone talked about that, wanted to change the United States. But not to change it by China itself. The hope is that the American people, African Americans, poor whites, Latinos, they're going to unite. I think that specifically came out when one of the heroes of this city, Martin Luther King Jr., was killed. And Mao himself wrote a statement basically saying the government of the United States, controlled by the Wall Street, is numbered. That was back in '68. Now, 50 years later, the U.S. is still going strong. However, United States did want to change China, because the United States want, as the White Ma suggested earlier, to democratize China. Now, the frustration is that when it realized China is not there to be changed by the U.S., the U.S. got really angry and upset, and then there is this reaction. Now, the third cycle is now Americans think China is trying to change the United States. I think David Shambaugh and Fred Tung today had the argument, the Chinese influence operation. I want to jump in here by saying China does not want to change the United States. What China wants to change is the American perception of China. That's a whole huge difference. So that paper that comes out, I think it is exaggerated. It is sowing seeds for a new wave of McCarthyism. It has to be debunked as I'm debunking this myth. So moving forward to sharing a nightmare. what makes me sleepless every night is actually Taiwan. This has been talked, and Michael Swain this morning said, that's also his concern. If you read Chinese social media, the rhetoric, there are people who are saying, we'll have to unify Taiwan by force. You hear people say, we want the island, 23 million people can go, or we don't care whether they're gonna die or where they're gonna go. And then there's the speech. I really like the speech by President Xi when he said, 中国人不打中国人. Chinese will never kill Chinese anymore because Chinese have been killing Chinese for so long. We don't want that to happen, but that danger of Chinese killing Chinese right now is looming because this is part of the two centennial dreams. So I hope the senior people here in the US and also in China will make sure that someone said status quo is the best and most beautiful thing. So I think the status quo in the Taiwan Strait is going to be maintained forever until one day people can figure out a way. So that's my nightmare. I hope if you share this nightmare and you convey this to as many people as possible, maybe in our own way, we can prevent that tragedy from taking place. Seeking a way, what I mean here is, U.S. China relationship is at a very troubled period of time. So we need to look for concrete ways so that two countries can work together. Hong Nong talked about collaboration in the Arctic. We were working to see U.S.-China collaboration in Africa. Adam Chen Duo talked about China and the U.S. building the CDC in Africa. China and the U.S. mediated the civil war in South Sudan. And I think early today, Carla Freeman talked about China and Americans, Chinese and Americans are training people in Afghanistan. So the more these trilateral collaboration happens, the more trust can be built and rebuilt. And therefore, US and China, that partnership can be tightened and increased so that we can avoid a possible confrontation or even conflict. So thanking the Gang of Four, 感谢四人帮. So this is a 3-day conference, and people come to me, how big a staff you have? And I said, I have 3. So if you add me, that's the Gang of Four. So I want the Gang of Four to stand up and to thank them. So Bob Capp is my senior advisor working in Seattle. Akif and Ian, they're standing right there. So it's really the 4 of us that work mostly on the 2-day meeting, 17th and 18th, and the work with every team with Hong Nong and Wu Shifeng Yuanzhang to make today's meeting. So I think, I worked tirelessly for this because President Carter went to China in 2009 to celebrate the 30th, and he went to China to celebrate the 35th. And our ambassador, Ambassador Peters, our CEO, said, I don't know if there's going to be a 45, I don't know if there's going to be a 50, so I want the whole world to come here to Atlanta to pay tribute to President Carter and to look at that legacy, which is not just a national charter, but an international charter, because it does take US and China to work together to anchor peace and the prosperity. Lastly, making an announcement. So we do have David Firestein here. He is going to be, hasn't been announced, but with his permission, he's going to be the founding CEO and the president of George H.W. Walker Foundation on U.S.-China relationship. George H.W. Bush, the Bush Senior Foundation on U.S.-China relationship. So the Carter Center and the foundation have already agreed in principle. Within this year, we're going to do another event to commemorate the 40th anniversary. And David always wants to do something different from how I have run the meetings. He said, this meeting, has lots of things. I said, well, I heard a lot of that, but you haven't really done anything yet. So this coming event will be his coming out of the closet or whatever. And so So this is, I'm just plugging, this is going to be a very exciting event again this year to pay tribute to President Carter. With that, I thank everyone for your participation, and let's go to the Center for Ethics and celebrate the ending of the 3-day conference. Thank you very much.